When you really think about China's grand strategy, what's the one thing that truly drives it all? Well, according to Sulmaan Wasif Khan's fantastic book, Haunted by Chaos, it's not ideology, it's not some grand plan for expansion. No, it's something much more primal, something deeply rooted in history. We're going to dig into his conclusion that China's entire strategic worldview is shaped by profound and constant fear.
This one, it just nails it. This is the core thesis of Khan's work. It's this deep-seated historical fear of chaos that acts as the primary engine for China's grand strategy. For its leaders, the state's survival is never, ever a sure thing. It's a constant, fragile struggle against all the forces, both inside and out, that could make it all fall apart.
So, here's how we're going to break down Khan's argument. We'll start with that foundational fear of chaos. Then, we'll look at the actual pillars of state security China has built to protect itself. After that, we'll see how this connects to some classical strategic theory, reflect on the paradoxes of China's own success, and then, finally, we'll look toward what is a very uncertain future.
To really get what China is doing today, you have to appreciate the incredible psychological weight of its past. Khan argues that every single paramount leader, from Mao all the way to Xi, has been profoundly shaped by these historical traumas. The Opium Wars, the century of humiliation, the sheer chaos of the Cultural Revolution. These aren't just dates in a history book. They are lessons that, as Khan writes, are burned in on the Chinese official mind.
This right here frames the entire official mindset. For the Chinese Communist Party, the very existence of the PRC isn't a given. It's this incredible achievement. The fact that it was pieced together and has managed to survive is considered a victory in and of itself. And because of that, the state has to be defended, all the time, against the ever-present threat of simply falling apart.
So, if you're this state, haunted by the fear of chaos, how do you actually fight back? What are your tools? Well, that brings us to the pillars of state security. Khan identifies this remarkably consistent set of instruments that the PRC has been using pretty much since its founding to guarantee its survival. First up is diplomacy, and it is incredibly pragmatic. You see, the point of their diplomacy isn't always to get a specific deal done. Sometimes it's just about keeping a working relationship going, because even decent relationships help keep the state alive. The strategy is to just keep talking, even with your adversaries. It's about getting a balance of power that works for China, often by trying to get closer to other big powers than they are to each other, to stop them from ganging up. And with smaller nations, it's all about one-on-one talks instead of facing a big group so you can play them off one another. The whole game is just about getting as many friends in your corner as possible.
And this is where you can really see the two-sided nature of China's military strategy. On the one hand, you've got this relentless push for a modern, super high-tech military. We're talking aircraft carriers, advanced missiles, the whole shebang, ready to go toe-to-toe with any superpower. But on the other hand, there's this deeply held belief in people's warfare. They never forgot that they won the state as a guerrilla force. And today that translates into using assets like, say, civilian fishing militias to just gradually apply pressure on adversaries in contested waters. It's high-tech and low-tech all working together.
Now, all of this comes together under their core military idea of active defense. So on the surface, it means what it sounds like. You build a powerful arsenal to defend yourself. But as Khan points out, that term is incredibly flexible. First, that defensive arsenal can be flipped to offensive purposes in a heartbeat. And maybe more importantly, as China's power has grown, the very definition of what needs to be defended has expanded across the globe, way, way beyond its own borders.
And finally, we've got the economy. Now, while the methods have changed like crazy, Khan argues the basic principle has never wavered. The economy is a fundamental piece of the national security architecture. For Mao, this meant disastrous experiments like the Great Leap Forward. For Deng, reform and opening was at its core about making the state prosperous enough to be secure. Then under Jiang and Hu, that prosperity itself became a new tool for diplomacy. And today we see that fully realized, with loans and investments being used as incredibly powerful instruments of statecraft.
Okay, let's just zoom out for a second. While China's strategy is absolutely unique to its own history, Khan's analysis shows how it also mirrors these timeless principles of statecraft, the kind of stuff you'd read about from the classic strategic thinkers.
I mean, you can practically feel the ghost of Karl von Clausewitz here. His famous line, "War is the continuation of policy by other means," is probably the single best lens for understanding how the PRC uses its military.
You see, the goal is hardly ever total war. It's about making the military serve a bigger policy goal. And that leads to this strategy of dialing tension up and down, like a thermostat, as needed. You see it in the limited border skirmishes with the Soviet Union, the missile tests used to send a very clear political message to Taiwan, and even the 1979 invasion of Vietnam, which was framed as a way to teach a lesson. The big risk in all this, as Khan notes, is that it assumes your adversary is going to be just as rational and calculating in their response.
And that risk of miscalculation, well, it points to a much bigger issue. This is where we get to the paradox of success. And this is where Khan's analysis becomes deeply critical, exploring how the very success of China's grand strategy is now creating new and, frankly, dangerous problems.
This quote from the text just says it all, doesn't it? It captures the central dilemma perfectly. The very things China is doing to make itself more secure are ironically making its neighborhood more hostile and creating new vulnerabilities at home.
And this table lays out those trade-offs starkly. You can see how that assertive push for state security has absolutely terrified its neighbors, sparking regional hostility and pushing them closer to the United States. The mind-boggling economic growth has led to devastating environmental ruin and massive inequality. And that drive for national unity? It's created deep internal discontent, leading to huge amounts of capital flight as people try to secure their own assets abroad. Every success has a dark flip side.
Khan makes a really powerful point about this consequence in particular. As he puts it, choking skies and poisoned land are enemies of a different kind. Think about it. You can manage geopolitical threats with clever statecraft, but environmental collapse, that's an existential threat to the actual physical foundation of your state, and it's a direct result of the very economic model that was supposed to save you.
So all of this brings us to our final section, an uncertain future. This is where Khan really zooms in on the human cost of this security-obsessed strategy and starts to question if it can even last in the long run.
It really raises a fundamental question. Okay, the state might be secure, but are its people happy? Khan points to this widespread feeling of unhappiness, a sense that the Chinese dream has kind of stalled out. He sees a lack of faith in a better tomorrow. And the evidence for that? Just look at the massive river of money flowing into foreign real estate. That suggests a population that doesn't feel truly secure at home. It's a grand strategy, he concludes, that's been untempered by humanities.
And this brings us right back to that core psychological tension that runs through the entire book, captured perfectly in Khan's closing metaphor. He sees China as a great colossus that's been made whole. It's standing tall, but inside it still feels incredibly fragile, hobbled by the memory of how hard it was to achieve safety, and just terrified that the whole thing could fall apart all over again.
And so, we're left with this enormous question. Can a grand strategy that is born from a deep historical fear of chaos ever really deliver lasting security and peace for its own people? Or is it just destined to forever create new insecurities in its endless search for absolute safety? It's a critical question, not just for understanding China, but for understanding the very nature of power itself.